The moment my brother shoved me into the zombie horde, I finally understood. In the apocalypse, good people are meant to have guns pointed at them. Reborn back to before the apocalypse broke out, I immediately sent my brother to hell. Just as I was about to become a cold-blooded villain, the system forced me to be a savior? Fine. Then I'll save them my way. My name is Chen Feng. Someone who has died once sees many things differently. Like pain. What does it feel like to be bitten to death by zombies? Not the clean, sharp pain of a knife stabbing into the heart, but bite by bite, flesh torn by teeth, bones crushed, your mind clear as you watch your body turn into a pile of rotten meat. That kind of pain burrows out from the marrow of your bones, every nerve screaming, but you can't cry out, because your throat has already been bitten through. I hate that bastard who pushed me into the horde, and hate myself even more for being blind, for actually treating someone like that as my best brother. 3 years. 3 years in the apocalypse. We fought our way out of starlight together, searched for food together, hid from zombies together. If I had a bite to eat, Zhao Tian had a bite too. And what happened? For a crate of expired canned food, he didn't even hesitate, just kicked me straight off the second floor. I fell into the horde, landing on my back. A dozen hands pinned me down at once, and then came the teeth. Before I died, I heard his footsteps, running away fast. So I swore, if heaven gave me another chance, the first person I'd kill would be him. Then I opened my eyes. The air conditioner hummed, the old wall unit rattling as if about to fall apart. I sat on the gaming chair in my Starlight rental, fingers on the keyboard, the screen showing a paused game. The living room smelled of smoke and instant noodles. Zhao Tian, a cigarette dangling from his lips, one foot on a chair, pointed at the computer screen and doubled over laughing. Phone. Look, the third one. This old bastard's gone crazy, biting anyone he sees. You think it could be some kind of rabies mutation? In the video, an old woman was strapped to a stretcher, and it took 4 medical staff just to barely hold her down. The old woman's face was deathly pale, her eyes completely white, veins bulging out from under her skin like black earthworms crawling. She opened her mouth and snarled, suddenly breaking one hand free, grabbed a medic's arm, and bit down. Blood sprayed. The crowd screamed. The stretcher toppled. The phone camera shook, the footage turning into chaos. I stared at that video, and instantly my back erupted in cold sweat. I had seen this scene before. That toppled stretcher. That biting old woman. Zhao Tian's words, the third one. Every frame matched my memory. Today is the 16th. The day the apocalypse descended. I wasn't dreaming. I had really come back. A massive emotional shock made my fingers start trembling. Not from fear. From excitement. The excitement of crawling back from hell and finding I still had a chance to settle scores with my own hands. I clenched my fist, nails digging into my palm. Pain. Real pain. Not the false signals of a dream. Zhao Tian was still laughing, handing me the lighter without looking back. Take it. What are you spacing out for? I took the lighter. With my other hand, I grabbed the ashtray on the table. Glass. Pretty heavy. About 2 Gene, with thick edges, giving a solid weight in my hand. Zhao Tian. Huh. He turned around, still wearing that carefree grin. That expression, the last thing I saw when I died was that same expression. He stood on the second floor platform, looking down at me. No guilt on his face. No fear, just a relieved lightness. In your last life, when you pushed me into the zombie pile, you were smiling just like that, weren't you? He froze. The smile stiffened on his face, as if suddenly frozen. What did you say? I didn't give him time to react. The moment the ashtray smashed down, I felt a violent tremor shoot through the web of my hand. The dull thud of bone against glass numbed from my palm all the way to the top of my skull. Zhao Tian, chair and all, crashed to the floor, his head hitting the baseboard in the corner. Blood instantly gushed from the wound on his forehead, covering half his face. He rolled on the ground, clutching his head, screaming like a slaughtered pig. Chen Feng, you're fucking crazy. You're crazy. Crazy your mom. I stood up and walked over. He wasn't dead. When he pushed me in my last life, he didn't leave me a way out. I straddled him, knee pressing down on his chest, ashtray raised above my head. 3 years as brothers. Bang. Blood splattered on my face. When I shared my last biscuit with you, what did you say? Bang. You said we'd be brothers in the next life. Bang. Fine. I'll send you to find that next life. The screams slowly died down. The ashtray kept smashing. Once, twice, 3 times. Mechanical, repetitive, pounding down with 3 years' worth of hatred. Blood splattered all over my face and body, onto the computer screen, dripping down over the video still playing. In the footage, the crowd kept screaming. Outside the frame, the world was collapsing. and all I felt was an unprecedented thrill. The cigarette in my mouth never fell, ash dropping onto Zhao Tian's mangled face. I exhaled a long plume of smoke. Fucking awesome. The bathroom door suddenly opened. What are you two arguing about? A woman wrapped in a bath towel walked out, one hand holding the edge of the towel, the other drying her wet hair with a smaller towel. Her voice carried a mix of impatience and coquettishness, the tone of a woman used to being spoiled. Han Hui, Zhao Tian's girlfriend. She took 2 steps, looked up, and saw Zhao Tian on the floor. The towel slipped from her hand. Her face drained of color, turning paper white in an instant, her lips trembling twice before she collapsed to the floor. A scream squeezed from her throat, shrill and piercing, like a bird being strangled. Chen Feng, what have you done? That's Zhao Tian. I stood up from Zhao Tian's body and looked down at her. I took a drag of my cigarette, my tone as flat as commenting on the weather. Yeah, your boyfriend. You killed him. You killed Zhao Tian. Han Hui scrambled toward the door, fingers trembling as she fumbled with the lock, muttering, "Call the police, call the police, call the police." The door opened, and she rushed out wearing only the bath towel. I stayed where I was. 3 seconds. Screams came from the hallway, sharper and more terrified than before. Open the door. Open the door, Chen Feng. There's something out here. Something. I strolled to the doorway. In the hallway, several figures were staggering this way from the stairwell. An old man, a middle-aged man, and someone in a security guard uniform. Their movements were stiff and twisted, joints creaking as if rusted. Feet dragging on the ground, fingernails scraping white marks on the wall. Faces deathly pale, eyes rolled back white. Bits of flesh and dark red bloody froth hung from the corners of their mouths. The security guard was still chewing, emitting a gurgling, low growl from his throat, like phlegm clogging his windpipe. Zombies. Real, genuine zombies. They were just eating the landlord. Han Hui grabbed the iron gate and shook it desperately, her makeup completely ruined, tears mixing with eyeliner streaming down like 2 black scars. Please open the door, please Chen Feng, let me in. I looked into her eyes and smiled. Weren't you running pretty fast just now? The zombies drew closer. She had no choice left. I opened the door. Han Hui rushed in and collapsed straight onto the floor, her bath towel coming undone, curling up in a ball and shivering, her teeth chattering loudly. I closed both the iron gate and the main door. Several zombies lunged at it, banging on the iron door, mouths reaching through the gaps in the bars, teeth still wedged with a piece of scalp with hair attached. Han Hui was so scared she crawled backward until she hit the fridge. I crouched down and patted her face. Soft and cold. From now on, you're mine. Got it. Why did you kill Zhao Tian? She asked, crying. Weren't you the best of brothers? Didn't you tell me he was the person you trusted most in this life? I didn't answer. I kicked her hard in the stomach. She flew backward, her back slamming against the door with a dull thud, forcing all the air out of her lungs. I stepped forward and grabbed her by the throat, applying just enough pressure to choke her without making her pass out. Her face went from pale to red to purple, her eyes bulging as if about to pop out, her hands clawing uselessly at my wrist. You have no right to ask questions. She nodded frantically, tears smearing all over my hand. Still asking? And no more questions. I let go. She collapsed on the floor, gasping for air like a stranded fish, sobbing sounds coming from her throat. Just then, a crisp sound echoed deep in my mind. Ding! The sound was very clear, like someone had struck a crystal inside my head. Immediately after, a semi-transparent screen unfolded before my eyes, with text appearing block by block. A mechanical voice seeped out from my bones, devoid of any emotion. Detected large-scale viral infection on aquamarine. Saviour System activated. Host, Chen Feng. Cannot be unbound. System. I froze for a moment. Rebirth was already enough, and now I even get a system as a bonus? This kind of treatment. I wouldn't have dared dream of it in my previous life. For every survivor the host rescues, physical vitality can be enhanced. Physical vitality is the sum of all-around attributes such as strength, speed, and constitution. The limit for an ordinary person is 10. The host has no upper limit. Current vitality, 7.4. Rescue method. A survivor agreeing to join the host's faction is considered a successful rescue. The host is immune to viral infection. Bonus. 1 cubic meter of independent space, capable of storing non-living items. A complete personal panel popped up on the screen. After reading it, I laughed. Laughed so hard I almost cried. Immune to infection. This meant I never had to worry about being bitten by a zombie and being done for. The greatest fear in the apocalypse isn't being bitten to death, but watching yourself slowly turn into a monster after being bitten. Infinite enhancement. Why are zombies terrifying? Because they feel no pain and have strength like wild beasts. If my physical fitness can surpass theirs, then the roles of hunter and prey should be swapped. Except for this condition. Saving people. I stopped smiling and asked the system. Hypothetically, if someone joins my faction and then dies due to some accident, do I keep the vitality points I gained? The system was silent for several seconds. The text on the screen flickered twice, as if stuck. In principle, it is not recommended for the host to do that. I'm asking if they're still there. Yes. Acquired vitality is permanently retained and will not be deducted for any reason. I lowered my head and looked at Han Hui, who was huddled in the corner. So if I eat her, it doesn't matter, right? A string of garbled code popped up on the screen, as if it had crashed. After several seconds, it managed to squeeze out a few more words. Theoretically, yes. Great. I crouched down in front of Han Hui and flashed a smile. That kind of bright, harmless smile. Seeing my smile, she trembled even more violently. Join my team? Yes, yes, yes. She nodded desperately, afraid that hesitating for even a second would make me change my mind. Another system notification sounded. Survivor joined faction, vitality plus 0.1. First rescue detected, bonus vitality plus 1. Instantly, a surge of heat rushed from the soles of my feet straight to the top of my head. That feeling is hard to describe, like every cell in my body was activated at once. My muscles swelled as if inflated, my bones crackled, and my clothes suddenly felt tighter, especially around the cuffs and chest. I pulled open my shirt and looked down. 8-pack abs, as clear as if carved by a knife, with sharp, defined muscle lines. The biceps and deltoids on my arms bulged, making the sleeves tight and full. I clenched my fist, and my knuckles cracked in a series of crisp sounds. That sense of power traveled from my arm all the way to my brain. I had no doubt that this punch could blow a zombie's head apart. Just 1.1 vitality added. What if it reaches 20, 50, 100? I threw my head back and laughed out loud, the laughter echoing in the cramped rental apartment. Han Hui shrank in the corner, not daring to breathe, looking at me as if I were another, even more terrifying monster. Outside the window, the sky darkened. It wasn't nightfall, but something blocking the sun. I walked to the balcony and pulled open the curtains. In the sky, a massive meteor, trailing thick smoke and flames, was plummeting rapidly from the southeast. It was so huge that for a moment I thought it would crash right onto my head. Then it swept overhead and flew into the distance. A few seconds later, the earth shook. A white light exploded on the distant skyline, like a small sun rising on the ground. Then the shockwave spread, and a sky-obscuring gray smoke surged into the sky, like a giant shroud covering the entire world. The computer screen flickered once and went black. My phone went dark at the same moment. All traces of modern civilization were wiped out in an instant. Han Hui covered her mouth, tears streaming down silently. She finally realized that the end of the world was not just empty words. That meteor, where did it land? She asked, her voice trembling. Yinsho City. She completely collapsed. Yinsho City, the core of power. If even that place was reduced to ruins, then the order of this world was truly finished. I tore open a shoebox, cut the cardboard to the right size, and tied it to my forearm. The thickness was just right, zombie teeth couldn't bite through, and it didn't hinder joint movement. This was my armor, crude, but practical. In my previous life, I had wrapped magazines around my arms, but when I was bitten, the pages came apart and the teeth went straight to the bone. In this life, I won't make the same mistake. Get up, pack your things. Put all the food and water into a backpack. We leave in 5 minutes. Where are we going? To find food. To find weapons. To find more people. Han Hui didn't dare resist. She got up and rummaged for food. Milk, dried noodles, instant noodles, ham sausages, all stuffed into the backpack. I pulled open a drawer and put in a fruit knife, a lighter, and a roll of tape. Then I picked up the mop in the corner, stomped off the mop head, exposing the broken wooden tip. Crude, but it can stab. I opened the door. In the hallway, several zombies were crouched over the landlord's corpse next door, tearing and biting. Intestines were dragged all over the floor. Dark red blood congealing into black traces in the gaps between the floor tiles. Hearing the noise, they turned their heads in unison, their rolled back white eyes fixed on me, emitting low, guttural growls from their throats. Then they rose from the corpse and staggered toward me. No fear, no hesitation, only the instinct to feed. I gripped the mop handle tightly and lowered my center of gravity. The first zombie lunged. I sidestepped and thrust the mop handle through its eye socket, giving it a twist. The zombie convulsed and fell. The second one lunged right after. I kicked it in the chest, sending it flying 2 meters back, but it immediately got up again. Its ribs were already shattered. Its chest cavity caved in, but that didn't affect its movement at all. That's zombies. They won't stop unless you blow their heads off. I adjusted my angle, and this time the mop handle pierced precisely into the temple. The zombie finally stopped moving. The third and fourth ones also fell. I wiped the blood off my face and glanced back. Han Hui stood at the doorway, covering her mouth, trembling all over, but clutching the spare wooden stick from the mop handle, not running away. Let's go. She bit her lip and followed behind me. The corridor was dark. The emergency lights had long gone out. We stepped over shattered glass and unidentifiable human tissue as we went downstairs, each step like treading at the entrance of hell. Screams and cries came from the distance, mixed with the roars of zombie hordes attacking, the whole building like a boiling pot. Stepping out of the Starlight neighborhood gate, I saw the city burning under the gray sky. Gray spores, visible to the naked eye, floated in the air. The leaves of the street trees had all withered overnight, and black tumor-like growths appeared on the bark. Foul-smelling black liquid churned in the sewers, with dead rats floating on top. But those rats were more than twice the normal size, with sharp, protruding teeth growing from their mouths. The meteor brought more than just a virus. It was transforming this planet. The soil began to turn black. The water sources emitted a putrid stench. Plants no longer grew toward the sun, but turned their heads toward the direction of flesh and blood. Animals began to mutate, growing organs and instincts that shouldn't belong to them. Human civilization came to an end the moment the meteorite fell. What followed was a hunting ground, and the prey were those still alive. In my last life, I was prey. In this life, I will be the hunter. I looked back at Starlight Complex, that old, dilapidated building. In 2 weeks, it would be abandoned by the survivors, overrun by hordes of zombies, and eventually burned to a skeleton in a fire one night. Zhao Tian's body was still lying in the living room of 201, slowly growing cold. Chen Feng, where do we go now? Han Hui's voice pulled me back to reality. She stood behind me, clutching her backpack, her face still streaked with undried tears, but her eyes were no longer as unfocused as before. The apocalypse forces people to grow up fast, whether they want to or not. I looked up into the distance. In the direction where the meteorite fell, thick smoke was still billowing. The sky was a grayish yellow, like a massive bruise. The streets were littered with wrecked cars and scattered suitcases. A zombie with only its upper body left was crawling along the road, dragging a long trail of blood behind it. This world is already finished. But I'm not done yet. First, we go to the fire station. They have professional forcible entry tools, fire axes, chemical protective suits, even generators and diesel reserves. In my last life, we didn't dare go there because there were too many zombies. But this life is different. I have the system. I can become stronger. I can. My thoughts were interrupted by a sound. A group of figures rounded the street corner. Not zombies. People. Living people. 7 or 8 of them, led by a bald man holding a blood-stained watermelon knife. His arm was wrapped with iron chains as armor, and behind him followed several nervous-looking men and women. When the bald man saw us, his eyes lit up, then his gaze landed on Han Hui. A meaningful grin spread across his face. Well, more living people. He rested the watermelon knife on his shoulder and swaggered over. Brother, you two think you can make it in this apocalypse alone? Join us. There's strength in numbers. His eyes swept past me and stuck back on a Han Hui, scanning her up and down. Han Hui shrank behind me. I put a cigarette in my mouth, lit it, and took a deep drag. Move. The bald man's smile froze for a moment. I said, brother. I looked up, stared into his eyes, and spoke each word deliberately. You're in my way, and don't look at my people with those eyes. I flashed a smile, exactly the same as the one I had shown Han Hui earlier, bright and harmless. The bald man clearly didn't grasp the meaning of that smile. He took a step forward with his knife, and several men behind him also closed in. In my mind, there was only one thought. Do these people count as survivors? If I convince them to join with my fists, will the system count it as a successful rescue? I'll find out by trying. I flicked the cigarette, but into the air. The ember traced an arc against the dim sky, landing on the ground and scattering a few sparks. The thug charging at the front didn't even have time to raise his knife. My fist had already smashed into his face. A solid punch. The sound of bones cracking was crisper than I imagined. While creating monsters, it also completely transformed this planet. A gray substance blotted out the sky, and global temperatures rose. For the blue star, which was already in summer, the entire planet became like a purgatory. Chen Feng stood on the balcony, looking up at the sky, and suddenly smiled. Truly nostalgic. My dear, I'm back. But this time, it's different. Chen Feng wrapped tape around his arm. Zhao Tian was dealt with. His revenge was settled. Next was survival. No, there were still a few others. Through the floor-to-ceiling window, Chen Feng looked at a building diagonally opposite. First floor. Back then, those guys had truly ambushed him. Although such tactics were nothing special in the apocalypse. But I've been reborn. So sorry about that. Chen Feng tore off the tape, checked the wrapping on his arm, flexed it. It was decent enough. We need to settle this score. After finishing, Chen Feng tossed the remaining materials to the dazed Han Hui. Do as I did. Han Hui didn't dare disobey and clumsily imitated Chen Feng's actions. She fixed the cardboard onto her own arm. Chen Feng just watched, occasionally giving pointers. Once done, they covered every part of their bodies that could be protected. Are we heading out now? Han Hui asked. No. Chen Feng plopped down on the sofa. We wait. Han Hui, when? Chen Feng glanced at her expressionlessly. Han Hui frantically shook her head, backed away, and shut her mouth. Chen Feng withdrew his gaze and looked at the sky. Nighttime. Once night falls, the zombie's movements become sluggish. It was an opportunity for him. Not fearing infection didn't mean he couldn't die. He only had one life. Figuring out how to get supplies first was the way to go. Han Hui's expression was complicated. She wanted to speak, but hesitated. You're curious, aren't you? Chen Feng lowered his head slightly, his tone amiable and his voice gentle. Han Hui relaxed a little and nodded softly. How do you know so much? The next moment. Slap. Chen Feng raised his hand and delivered a hard slap. Han Hui clutched her face, her eyes filled with terror, her lips trembling with fear. Do exactly what I say, and let your curiosity rot in your gut. Chen Feng was expressionless. Han Hui nodded repeatedly, trembling. Chen Feng grabbed her chin with his large hand. You can think whatever you want. You can even think about how to kill me. Han Hui shook her head frantically in terror. No, I didn't think that. Chen Feng smiled indifferently. Don't be afraid, it's fine. You can think all you want in your mind. But in front of me, you can only be an obedient dog. Understand? Han Hui nodded fearfully. Chen Feng's tone was very gentle, but she knew it was all a facade. This guy was simply a demon. Chen Feng patted her cheek and looked her body up and down. Behave. With such a pretty face and figure, I'd hate to use you only as food. Information about Han Hui appeared before him. Name: Han Hui. Age: 22. Height: 172 centimeters. Weight: 55 kilograms. Measurements: see physical activity. 5.8. Infected. No, it had to be said, Han Hui was absolutely top tier. Outstanding looks, first-class figure. Han Hui noticed where Chen Feng's gaze was directed and weakly lowered her head, not daring to look at him. Go to sleep. Huh. Han Hui looked up, eyes wide. Hearing Chen Feng's words, she thought of a certain possibility, but she hadn't expected Chen Feng to be so direct. Please, don't do this. After all, I'm your brother's woman. Chen Feng frowned. Han Hui's expression changed, and she hurriedly started undressing. Okay, don't kill me. I'll do it. Chen Feng frowned slightly. What are you doing? Han Hui stammered. Aren't you telling me to sleep with you? Chen Feng's face darkened, and he stood up. Are you an idiot? Go to sleep, by yourself. Save your energy for the operation later. Oh. Han Hui suddenly understood and fled back to the bedroom. Chen Feng added, remember, don't use tap water. Han Hui stopped at the bedroom door and asked instinctively, why? There's a virus in the water. Chen Feng explained flatly, you'll get infected and turn into a zombie. Han Hui blurted out in fear, but I just took a shower. It's fine. Chen Feng explained simply, the meteorite brought it. The water's color has already changed. Go see for yourself. Han Hui understood and obediently returned to the bedroom. Chen Feng went back to his own bedroom, locked the door, and moved the table over to block it. Then he slept peacefully. He didn't know how much time had passed. Chen Feng woke from his sleep, got up, went to the window, and pulled back the curtain to observe the situation outside. The sky was still shrouded in a hazy gray, but it was noticeably darker than before. The residential compound was relatively calm. He went to the living room. 1907. Just over 3 hours. Perfect timing. Chen Feng glanced at the clock. This was already his current limit. In the apocalypse, deep sleep was a luxury. He hadn't had a comfortable sleep in a long time. Chen Feng went to Han Hui's door and knocked gently. No one answered. Chen Feng didn't stand on ceremony and opened the door directly. On the bed, Han Hui was sleeping soundly. Swish, Chen Feng yanked the blanket off. Han Hui snapped her eyes open and was about to scream instinctively, but Chen Feng's scolding scared it back. Shut up. You really can sleep, and you even took off your clothes. Do you think you're on vacation? Chen Feng frowned at the clothes placed beside the bed. What an idiot. Aren't you afraid zombies will burst in? Do you want to run out bare-assed? Han Hui nervously grabbed her clothes and haphazardly pulled them on, awkwardly explaining. I couldn't fall asleep at first. It took a long time before I fell asleep. Sorry. Get dressed and come out. I'll wait in the living room. Chen Feng left that line and went to the living room to do the final checks. 2 backpacks. One contained food and milk. The other contained a backpack and a woven plastic sack. Apart from that, there was nothing else. He didn't plan to pack anything else in the backpacks, because there was nothing worth packing. None of the 3 could cook. They usually ate at the school cafeteria or ordered takeout, or else instant noodles, at best cooking some noodles with an egg. There wasn't even a kitchen knife at home. Chen Feng kept 1 pack of cigarettes and put it in his pocket, tossing the rest into his space. Chen Feng moved the computer aside, dismantled the computer desk support bar, swung it a few times. It felt decent enough. Han Hui quickly finished getting ready and came out. Chen Feng tossed her the bag containing the woven sack and the backpack. Carry it. 1 for each. Han Hui looked at the backpack in her hands, nodded obediently, and slung it behind her back. She asked nervously, I'm a bit nervous. Can I go to the bathroom first? Go ahead, no rush. We still need to wait. Don't use the toilet, just grab any basin. Once it gets wet, you'll never have another chance to use the bathroom. Han Hui nodded repeatedly and turned to go into the bathroom. Chen Feng pulled out a cigarette, went to the balcony, and looked at a certain room in the building opposite. After finishing in the bathroom, Han Hui came over. Chen Feng glanced at her to confirm she wasn't infected, then turned back to look out the window. Wait until I finish smoking. Han Hui nodded obediently. Chen Feng held the cigarette between his fingers, not smoking it, but instead glanced at the clock. When the hands reached a certain position, Chen Feng casually looked toward a certain balcony in the opposite residential building. He silently counted down in his mind. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ah! A piercing scream echoed through the neighborhood. What happened? Han Hui was startled by the sudden scream. Who knows? Chen Feng took a hard drag of his cigarette, tossed the butt, stomped it out, his eyes resolute. Let's move. Residential building. In the stairwell, 2 figures slowly advanced through the shadows, their footsteps deliberately hushed, barely audible. Chen Feng looked at the dim corridor ahead. Because the power supply was affected, all the lights were out. We might run into zombies when we go downstairs. Remember, no matter what happens, no shouting or yelling. Chen Feng warned with a stern expression. Oh, okay. Han Hui nodded nervously, her face pale from fear. Chen Feng glanced out the window at the gray night sky, then resolutely led Han Hui toward the stairwell. 1 step, 2 steps. Chen Feng counted silently in his mind, each step taken with extreme caution, until they reached the 1st floor. The view instantly widened considerably. The gray substance in the night sky affected the sunlight, but at night, it provided a helpful advantage. In places without the shadows of buildings, due to the lack of contrasting light, visibility was actually somewhat better than usual. Chen Feng breathed a sigh of relief. The most troublesome phase was over. Good. Now they just had to pass through a corridor. His destination wasn't far. At the end of the 1st floor was the supermarket, the ground floor shop of their building. Though called a shop, it was actually a self-converted supermarket. The supermarket's main entrance was outside, but there was a small inner door in the residential corridor for the building's residents to enter and exit. Chen Feng and Han Hui moved cautiously. Just as they turned a corner, Chen Feng abruptly stopped. Ahead, a shadow was slowly moving. Han Hui covered her mouth in terror. Chen Feng frowned sharply. He couldn't turn around to blame Han Hui, and instead stared intently at that figure. It was a zombie. The zombie seemed to sense something and looked in their direction. A low, inhuman growl was very clear in the quiet corridor. Huh. Chen Feng gripped the iron bar in his hand, ready to fight at any moment. The good news was that the zombie apparently hadn't noticed them and continued moving erratically. The problem was, about 10 meters behind the zombie was his destination. Chen Feng was silent for a moment, then simply put the iron bar into the side pocket of his backpack. The iron bar wasn't sharp or heavy enough. It was more for keeping distance and defense against zombies. Chen Feng discreetly glanced at the building opposite, clenched his fist. Most of the zombies in Starlight had been drawn away by the earlier scream. Now was the best chance. They had to pass through quickly. He needed to end the fight cleanly, Dragging it out would be bad for him. The zombie hadn't spotted him yet. In this situation, with his pre-rebirth skills and his current physical condition, he could definitely kill it barehanded. Chen Feng stepped forward with one foot, but suddenly his body froze in place. Han Hui was frantically tugging at his t-shirt. A low growl, like a thunderclap, rooted him to the spot. There's another one. Chen Feng frowned deeply. The other zombie hadn't noticed them, but its direction of movement was, as luck would have it, heading straight toward them. Han Hui didn't dare speak and anxiously grabbed Chen Feng. Chen Feng assessed the situation of both zombies, took a coin from his pocket with his large hand, gauged the positions of the two zombies, and threw it toward the lobby entrance. The crisp sound of the coin hitting the ground was like a key turning a switch. The next second, the two zombies moved toward where the coin had landed. Chen Feng didn't hesitate. He grabbed Han Hui and fled toward the end of the corridor. The boost in his vitality hadn't made him overconfident. Dealing with two zombies, an instant kill would be too difficult. In this situation, if he couldn't kill them instantly, there would be big trouble. Running was the most sensible option. The two ran quickly, their heavy breathing mixed with chaotic footsteps. They're coming. They're chasing us. Han Hui's voice trembled. She couldn't stay silent now because the two zombies from before were already chasing them. Chen Feng didn't look back. He had guessed as much. A coin could distract, but only for a moment. Soon they would be drawn by their footsteps. He hadn't expected a single coin to solve two zombies. He just needed to buy a little time. Almost there. Cut the chatter, run. Chen Feng grabbed Han Hui and ran for their lives. At this point, there was no time to worry about talking or not. The two quickly passed through the corridor to the supermarket's back door. The footsteps behind them kept getting closer. Han Hui grabbed the handle, but her expression suddenly froze. She looked up at Chen Feng, her face pale. The door, it's locked. Move. Chen Feng pushed Han Hui aside and felt along the doorframe, finding a key. With a soft click, the door opened. Just as the two zombies were about to close in, Chen Feng grabbed Han Hui's arm and slipped into the supermarket, slamming the door shut with a bang. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds later. Bang, bang, bang. A series of pounding sounds rang out continuously. Han Hui, hands on her knees, panted heavily, staring at the iron door with lingering fear. After a good while, the noise gradually subsided. All right, they seemed to have given up. Before Han Hui could finish, Chen Feng covered her mouth with one hand. Chen Feng pulled the iron bar from his backpack and pointed in a certain direction inside the supermarket. Han Hui's pupils dilated in shock as she looked over fearfully. Who? Suddenly, a weak voice came from within the supermarket, the trembling voice tinged with uncertain inquiry. The other party. It's a person, right? Chen Feng was silent for 2 seconds, then spoke. Yes. Having received Chen Feng's affirmative response, among the shelves inside, under the hazy moonlight, a shadow stood up. It was a person. Judging by the build, silhouette, and voice, it should be a young man. It's a person. See, I told you it was a person. As the words fell, a woman stood up beside him, peering at Chen Feng appraisingly. At the same time, in a distant corner, a woman spoke up in a rapid-fire manner. Seriously, you scared me to death. Hey, don't scare people like that, okay? A slightly louder voice interrupted her complaints. What a bummer, 2 more people. Another man spoke fearfully. Oh my God, you scared me to death. Chen Feng swept his gaze around. 5 people. No, wait. 6 people. There was still someone in the corner, not speaking, and judging by the figure it should be a man. 4 men and 2 women. The woman next to the man who spoke first stared at Chen Feng and asked uncertainly, You two haven't been bitten, have you? One sentence instantly made the previously relaxed atmosphere tense. The 6 people all looked over at once. Their faces couldn't be seen clearly, but both Chen Feng and Han Hui could feel the unfriendly stares from everyone. Chen Feng silently slipped the iron rod back into his backpack pocket. He brought Han Hui to a spot where the moonlight was clearer and raised his hand to signal. No. Tisk, worrying for nothing. The man with the loud voice complained impatiently, turned around, opened the freezer, and looked for something. Don't mind him. The man who spoke first came out, smiling to smooth things over. My girlfriend is just cautious. As he said this, he shot a resentful glare at the man in front of the freezer. Chen Feng caught his look. Yu Liang, Su Lily, Xie Yan, Zhang Chong. I'm Shirley. Shirley introduced everyone one by one. This is my girlfriend, Li Feng. The one with the loud voice is Yu Liang. The woman who kept complaining is Su Lily. Zhang Chong nodded in a goofy way as a greeting. Xie Yan is a slightly chubby man, stuffing a bag of chips into his mouth. Chen Fan looked at the couple in front of him, Shirley and Li Feng. Su Lily? Han Hui walked out in surprise, staring intently at Su Lily behind the shelf. Su Lily from room 701. Is that you? Su Lily came out from behind the shelf, carefully sizing up Han Hui. Who are you? Do you know me? Han Hui. I'm Han Hui from room 703. Su Lily strode out, and when she saw Han Hui, she was visibly taken aback. Delighted, Sister Hui. Chen Feng glanced at Su Lily. Classmates. Chen Feng's gaze seemed to casually sweep over Shirley and Li Feng, forming some guesses about their identities. Since we're all here, we're all neighbors. Li Feng asked tentatively. Are you also from Manhua? As expected. Chen Feng raised an eyebrow. Yes, my name is Chen Feng. Shirley exclaimed. Hey, that's great. We're all classmates. Hearing the word Manhua, almost everyone except Yu Liang looked over. Chen Feng. Li Feng looked at the people in the supermarket and explained. These are all our classmates. Since you know each other, you should be juniors like us. Well, Xie Yin is a senior, 1 year above us. He's a senior student. Zhang Chang is in the same year as us. Li Feng finally looked at Yu Liang with an awkward expression. He's not our classmate. Yu Liang glanced at the group. His tattooed, burly arm grabbed a can of cola and popped it open with a disdainful smirk. Everyone present looked rather displeased, seemingly harboring a certain degree of aversion toward Yu Liang. Chen Feng nodded to everyone in acknowledgement. The situation here was somewhat beyond his expectations. He hadn't anticipated so many people in the supermarket. Before his rebirth, he hadn't come to the supermarket right away. Back then, he also held on to illusions, waiting for rescue. 3 days later, with nothing left to drink at home, he had no choice but to steel himself and go out. At that time, the supermarket was empty. The door was wide open, the inside was messy, with snacks and garbage bags strewn everywhere. 3 days. Something must have happened in those 3 days to make these guys choose to leave, and it definitely wasn't something trivial. This is a supermarket. A uniquely good place in the apocalypse. Chen Feng frowned slightly. He couldn't worry about that now. He turned and began searching the shelves. He went to a familiar spot, picked up a bottle of energy drink, gulped down a few mouthfuls, then tossed a bottle to Han Hui. Han Hui wasn't idle either. The two of them were dying of thirst. It was summer to begin with, and because of the meteorite, the air was stifling hot like a steamer. Even at night, it was unbearable, and they had come downstairs in fear and trepidation. Han Hui tilted her head back and drank the beverage urgently. After a couple of sips, Chen Feng relied on his memory to go to the inner shelves, took down AA batteries from the shelf, then went to the adjacent shelf and took down a box and opened it. A flashlight. The meteorite impact had affected most electronic devices, chips, and so on, including lithium batteries. Fortunately, these dry batteries were unaffected. The lights were broken. Flashlights still work. Chen Feng inserted the batteries, adjusted the beam to its shortest range, and turned on the flashlight. The light emanating from the supermarket drew everyone's attention. Whoa, damn, why didn't I think of that? Shirley slapped his forehead. So flashlights still work. Bro, where did you get it? Give me one. Shirley hurried over. Although there was moonlight, it was still a bit dim for human eyes. It was far from the sense of security provided by artificial light, which has long held a significant place in human life. Me too, me too. Zhang Chang trotted over eagerly. The others also seemed interested. Chen Feng tossed a box to Shirley and pointed out the location to Zhang Chang. The batteries are on the shelf next to it. Use them carefully, don't make it too bright. Only illuminate close distances and don't attract those things. Humans get infected and turn into zombies. What changes is not just the loss of reason and extreme aggressiveness. Their senses also change. The most obvious are vision and hearing. Vision deteriorates to a certain degree, but hearing is greatly enhanced. That's why the zombies earlier chased the coin relentlessly. But that doesn't mean they've gone blind. It's nighttime now. Strong, moving light will definitely attract the zombies' attention. Got it, don't worry. Shirley cheerfully took the flashlight to look for batteries. The people in the supermarket weren't idle. Some grabbed food, some grabbed water, and some, like Chen Feng, grabbed flashlights. Chen Feng glanced at Han Hui, and she immediately came over to stay by his side. Han Hui could tell Chen Feng was looking for her, and she didn't dare disobey. Take this. Chen Feng handed Han Hui an item. Han Hui looked down, a bit puzzled. It was a U-lock. Right after that, Chen Feng found an even larger one from the shelf. Shirley fiddled with his flashlight, saw what Chen Feng was doing, and shook his head with a laugh. Don't waste your effort. Those things are useless. You need a knife. This crappy little store doesn't even sell them, not even a kitchen knife. Chen Feng remained unmoved and continued searching. He wasn't looking for a weapon, Chen Feng searched carefully with the flashlight and finally pulled out an even larger one. Chen Feng stood up with the lock, and as the flashlight beam swayed, it triggered a sudden scream from Shirley. Whoa! On the counter, a watermelon knife was buried under a newspaper. It looked like it had been casually placed there. The knife had no sheath, so it didn't seem like merchandise, probably the store owner's own knife for cutting fruit. Shirley quickly walked over to grab it, but someone moved faster. A tattooed arm entered his view and snatched the watermelon knife first. Yu Liang toyed with the watermelon knife. The blade was about 20 centimeters long, looked very sharp, and felt good in the hand. Haha, now who's afraid of damn zombies? I'll chop them to death. Yu Liang swung it twice smugly and glanced at Shirley. Shirley's face turned livid as he protested indignantly. I saw that first. You saw it, so it's yours? Yu Liang snorted coldly. Damn, I also saw that building over there. You gonna make it take my last name? Besides, Yu Liang plopped down carelessly on a lower shelf nearby. Snacks clattered to the floor, but he acted completely indifferent, staring at the group arrogantly and pointing the knife at Shirley. Seems like that guy over there saw this knife first. He didn't say anything, so what the hell are you yapping about? Shirley's face turned as ugly as if he'd swallowed a fly. Hey bro, you don't mind if I take this knife, do you? Yu Liang pointed the knife at Chen Feng with a playful expression. Whatever. Chen Feng didn't even look at him. He found some chocolate on the shelf, unwrapped it, and started eating. He needed to replenish some energy now. As for that watermelon knife, it's just a knife. If he wanted it, he could have taken it long ago. No need for two people to fight over it. When dealing with zombies, that kind of thing isn't the optimal solution. You could even say it's a poor choice. Weapons with strong striking power and long reach are best, like axes, hammers, or spears. Even a crowbar is better than a watermelon knife. Chen Feng, chewing on chocolate, picked up the U-lock and went to the back door they had just entered. He slid the lock through the gap and locked it. You locked the front door, right? Chen Feng asked casually. Shirley nodded. Don't worry, I locked it. By the way, how did you two get in? I remember the back door was locked too. Chen Feng explained simply. I happened to know where the key was. Chen Feng took the lock and went inside, locking the warehouse and side door as well. Watching Chen Feng bustling about, Yu Liang sneered. Man, you're way too cautious. It's already locked. Chen Feng said nothing. He didn't trust these guys. More importantly, what had happened in these 3 days that made these people choose to leave or get killed? That was a big question. As soon as the words left his mouth, a crisp jingling sound rang out. Everyone jolted. The sound was all too familiar. They all looked toward the front door. A zombie staggered in through the doorway. The sudden appearance of the zombie stunned everyone. What the fuck? Yu Liang, short-tempered, couldn't hold back his curse. Didn't I tell you to lock the door? Shirley stumbled backward in panic. I locked it. I locked it. I definitely locked it. You dumbass, lock my ass. You call this locked? Yu Liang cursed and grumbled. Su Lily screamed. Get it out quickly. Everyone scattered in terror, no one daring to step forward. Zhang Chong was so scared he simply hid behind a shelf. Shirley and Li Feng also kept backing away. Han Hui quietly edged closer to Chen Feng, trying to find some sense of safety, her voice trembling. Zombie. Doesn't matter. Chen Feng's gaze swept over the front door. Outside on the street, a few zombies were approaching, but they were still quite far away. So, for now, the only threat was this one. A cold, murderous glint flashed in Chen Feng's eyes, and the hand hanging at his side clenched slightly. Suddenly, Yu Liang's loud voice drew everyone's attention. Scared of a feather? I'll chop it to death. Yu Liang grabbed the watermelon knife and charged forward. Shirley, hiding behind a shelf, timidly poked his head out. Chop its head, chop its neck. Do I need you to teach me? Yu Liang cursed and grumbled. Useless piece of shit. Stuff that's all over the internet, and you're still yapping. Chen Feng's clenched hand relaxed. That part was true. When he was looking up information, attacks were happening frequently online, and people had figured out solutions. The head and the spinal nerves. Those were the keys to killing zombies. Yu Liang had a weapon, plus zombies were slow at night, and he knew their weak points. His chances of success were pretty high. Chen Feng picked up a piece of chocolate, unhurriedly popped it into his mouth, and watched quietly. Seeing Yu Liang take the initiative, everyone couldn't help but look over, all wanting to see how Yu Liang would handle the zombie. Yu Liang, noticing everyone's gaze, couldn't help but feel smug. Watch closely. Due to the night's influence, the zombie's movements weren't fast. It staggered closer. Yu Liang gripped his hand, tightened his hold on the watermelon knife, took 2 steps forward, and actively met it with a horizontal slash. A black line of blood instantly appeared on the zombie's neck. It slowly trickled down. The zombie became sluggish, as if it had lost all its strength. Hurrah! Yu Liang stared excitedly at the watermelon knife in his hand. Damn, that felt good. Go to hell. Yu Liang lifted his leg and kicked the zombie down, slamming it heavily onto the ground. Everyone was dumbfounded. Yu Liang turned around and smugly scanned the crowd. Especially when he saw Shirley, he snorted coldly. Convinced now, dumbass? Shirley's face flushed red. He hung his head in embarrassment, unable to say a word. Useless. Yu Liang froze, then followed the voice to look at Chen Feng. You said that? Are you cursing me? You got a death wish. Yu Liang gripped the watermelon knife and pointed it straight at Chen Feng. Everyone looked over. Chen Feng's face was expressionless. Useless. It's not dead yet. A beast-like low growl sounded by his ear. Yu Liang paused, then instinctively turned his head. The zombie pounced on Yu Liang, pinning him down. Yu Liang instinctively raised his arm to resist. Accompanied by a scream. The zombie bit down hard on Yu Liang's arm. The watermelon knife fell to the ground. Save me! Save me! Su Lily screamed. Li Feng and Shirley hid to the side. The supermarket was thrown into chaos. Chen Feng's eyes sharpened, and he burst forward. He picked up the fallen watermelon knife and smoothly stabbed it into the zombie's neck. The motion was fluid, without a moment's pause. Chen Feng stepped around to the side, gripped the knife with both hands, and used his body weight to pull back. Crack! The zombie's head lolled to the side, and then, with the watermelon knife still lodged in its neck, its entire body toppled over, completely losing mobility, dead on the spot. Instant kill. Done in one fluid motion. Everyone stared at Chen Feng in shock. Chen Feng pulled out an iron bar and went to the door, wedging it horizontally between the two door handles. Outside, a few zombies were slapping against the glass door. Chen Feng ordered Han Hui. Toss me that lock. Han Hui paused, then threw the U-lock Chen Feng had given her earlier. Chen Feng caught the lock, locked the door without a word, and stepped back. The next moment, the zombies rushed up and pounded on the door, their growls terrifying. One zombie's arm reached in through the gap between the doors. Everyone watched in fear, afraid the zombies would burst in at any second. Luckily, there weren't many zombies. Just these 2 or 3 didn't cause much damage to the door. Chen Feng looked up, grabbed the rolling shutter door with both hands. With a rumbling screech of metal, he pulled the shutter down, completely cutting off the zombie's line of sight. Everyone held their breath and stared at the door. No one dared relax in this situation. Soon, as the zombie's sounds faded, everyone finally breathed a sigh of relief. Damn it. That hurts like hell. Yu Liang cursed as he scrambled up from the floor. He kicked the zombie on the ground over and over, venting his rage. Fuck you. You piece of shit. You got bitten, didn't you? Su Lily's sudden voice made Yu Liang's movements halt. Yu Liang awkwardly lowered his arm. Who says I got bitten? I scraped it when I fell. Shirley. If you get bitten, you'll turn into a zombie. Everyone stared at Yu Liang. This wasn't a secret. Everyone knew it. Yu Liang knew it too. I said. I scraped it. Yu Liang glared at everyone, a dangerous glint in his eyes, gritting his teeth and enunciating each word. Faced with Yu Liang's ferocity, everyone shrank back a little. Chen Feng stepped forward calmly, lifted his foot to step on the zombie's head, bent down, grabbed the handle, and pulled the knife out. Staring at the zombie, Chen Feng began to understand. The reason there was no one in the supermarket might have been because of this zombie. But that didn't matter to him. Events from before his rebirth were just references. His trajectory had already changed, so many things might have changed too, and couldn't be fully relied upon. Yu Liang looked at Chen Feng warily. To him, everyone here was weak. Only Chen Feng, who had just killed the zombie in an instant, was worth his attention. I won't get infected, don't worry. Chen Feng looked up at him. Oh. The next second, a blade flashed. Everyone's eyes widened in shock. Yu Liang looked down in disbelief, wanting to see something, but he couldn't lower his head at all. He opened his mouth, but couldn't make a sound. The watermelon knife had pierced through his throat. Chen Feng held the knife with one hand, expressionless, then placed his other hand on it, gripping with both hands. Too bad you don't get to decide. The next moment, Chen Feng suddenly exerted force, and with the sound of bones and joints snapping, Yu Liang's head lolled to the side, and he collapsed. From now on, Chen Feng looked up at everyone. I'm in charge here. What did you say? Xie Yan, who had been silent all along, stepped out with a frown and asked. Shirley and Li Feng also came out, their expressions somewhat unnatural. Including Zhang Chong, They were all puzzled and resistant to Chen Feng's sudden domineering declaration. Chen Feng said expressionlessly, "Literally, from now on, this supermarket is mine. If you want to stay here, you follow my orders." Xia Yin glanced at Chen Feng defiantly. "I only listen to myself." Su Lily crossed her arms and remarked sarcastically, "Hey handsome, aren't you being too overbearing? What I want to do is my own freedom." Zhang Chang scratched his head. "Bro, you're pretty impressive. I think we can team up, but having me completely obey you." Chen Feng smiled. "Who agrees and who disagrees?" Shirley coughed and stepped forward. "Let me say something fair. It's fate that brought us here. We're all in the same situation now, and we're all classmates. Isn't orders a bit harsh? It's not about who orders whom, right everyone?" Xia Yin sneered. "I disagree. So what? Are you going to kill us all?" As soon as he finished speaking, before anyone could react, Chen Feng stabbed Xia Yin in the chest with one thrust. Xia Yan's eyes widened as he looked down at the knife in his chest, his face full of disbelief. Chen Feng pulled out the knife. Xia Yin fell straight down, dead. Chen Feng stepped forward slowly and delivered a vicious slash to Xia Yan's neck as a finishing blow, to prevent Xia Yin from mutating due to the zombie blood on the knife. It wasn't until Chen Feng stood up that everyone came back to their senses. "Ah!" Su Lily screamed and collapsed, falling onto the shelf and knocking over several bags of snacks. But at that moment, no one was curious about her disheveled state. Everyone stared at Chen Feng in horror. No one had expected it. Chen Feng was so ruthless. He really would kill. Chen Feng, holding the knife, swept a cold gaze over the entire scene, like a demon choosing its prey. "Who agrees and who disagrees?" "I agree." Zhang Chang's voice trembled with fear as he raised his hand and spoke. "Boss, I agree. I'll follow you." Chen Feng glanced at Han Hui and Su Lily. Han Hui needed no words, and Su Lily was so scared her face turned pale. "AG agree." Chen Feng finally looked at the couple, Shirley and Li Fang. Li Fang hid behind Shirley, shaking his arm, hoping her boyfriend would make a decision. Shirley was so frightened his legs trembled, and a wet spot appeared on his pants. "Shirley, I agree." Li Fang quickly echoed, "I agree too." "Useless." Chen Feng glanced over. "If you pee on the food, I'll butcher you and eat you." Shirley was so scared he stood up and quickly moved away. Everyone looked over. Shirley blushed with embarrassment, and Li Fang felt awkward too. "Chen Feng, you, and you, move the body out through the side door and dump it. The rest of you, gather the food and put it in the warehouse." Zhang Chang and Shirley shuddered and slowly walked to Yu Chang's body. The two exchanged glances, seeing reluctance in each other's eyes. "No choice. Let's move it." Shirley was the first to go to Yu Chang's feet. Zhang Chang's expression changed. "Damn." Shirley gave an awkward smile. "Next time, I'll take the head, okay?" The two carried the body to the side door. Meanwhile, the three women also got moving, taking food off the shelves one after another and carrying it to the warehouse. Chen Feng counted the batteries, fixed up a few flashlights, and placed them at key spots like corridor corners and the warehouse for lighting. He unlocked the side door. "Go out." Zhang Chang and Shirley looked grim. "There aren't zombies outside, right?" Shirley asked, lacking confidence. Chen Feng said expressionlessly, "There are." Shirley's face instantly turned pale. Zhang Chang also looked grim. "Chen Feng, go out." Zhang Chang steeled himself and walked out. Seeing Shirley still in place, he gritted his teeth. "Move." Shirley followed with an ugly expression. Chen Feng watched their figures until they turned back, and also threw Xia Yan's body out. Then everyone started moving the food together. "Boss, there's no more room." Li Fang was holding a box of ham sausages, unsure where to put it. The warehouse was a small room of about a dozen square meters. It originally had supplies inside. It simply couldn't hold all the food from the supermarket. Besides, Chen Feng had instructed them to leave a bed for him. There just wasn't enough space. "Put it here." Chen Feng pointed to a corner of the corridor. "Pile the rest over there." While everyone was busy, in the shadows, "Are you okay?" Li Fang asked Shirley with concern. "Were there zombies outside?" Shirley stared at Chen Feng with a grim expression. "A few. It's fine." "That bastard. Keep your voice down." Li Fang was startled and instinctively glanced at Chen Feng. Seeing that Chen Feng wasn't paying attention, she breathed a sigh of relief. He's too ruthless. Let's just listen to him for now. "Humph. If it weren't for that knife of his, would I be afraid of him?" Shirley grumbled indignantly. "I spotted that knife first. It should be mine. With that knife, I could kill zombies too." Li Fang soothed him. "All right, stop it. Let's go move the stuff." Soon, the remaining small portion of supplies was sorted. Everyone stood around, heads drooping, listless. Su Lily squatted on the ground. Han Hui rubbed her arms. Zhang Chong leaned on his knees with both hands. The couple Shirley and Li Feng weren't much better off, leaning on each other, exhausted. Boss. Zhang Chong steeled himself and spoke. Can we have some water? It's too hot. Chen Feng brought out a case of bottled water from the warehouse and placed 5 bottles on the counter. This is for you today. Thanks, boss. Zhang Chong quickly grabbed a bottle, opened it, and tilted his head back to drink. The other 4 didn't idle either. They were dying of thirst, and only a fool wouldn't drink when water was available. Each took a bottle. After a couple of sips, Shirley asked, So how much water do we get tomorrow? Just give it to us all at once. 1 bottle. Chen Feng glanced at the clock. No rush. There are still over 20 hours to go. Over 20 hours. Hearing this, everyone was stunned. What do you mean? Shirley asked, bewildered. Chen Feng looked at him as if he were an idiot. Literally. Is there something wrong with your brain? Today, tomorrow? Shirley looked up at the clock. It was now 1:30 in the morning. Everyone suddenly realized. This is for today? Shirley's eyes widened as he looked at the half-full bottle of water in his hand. Chen Feng, what else? The 5 people's expressions all turned grim as could be. They had originally thought today meant before dawn. It turned out it included the entire next day as well. 1 bottle of water. No, almost just half a bottle now. For a whole day? How could that possibly be enough to drink? It wasn't enough normally, let alone now with no air conditioning, no fan, and it was sweltering hot. Chen Feng swept his gaze across the room. From now on, 2 people per group, working in shifts, 3 hours per shift. The 5 looked at each other. Zhang Chong scratched his head. Boss, but there are 5 of us. Right, so the remaining 1 will be in a group with me. Chen Feng carried the remaining bottled water back to the warehouse. I'll take the first shift. You guys decide who will join me. Zhang Chong scratched his head. Damn, how do we split up? Who goes with him? He turned around. Su Lily was holding Han Hui's arm. The meaning was self-evident. Zhang Chong then looked at Shirley and Li Feng. Shirley took Li Feng's hand and glared at him. What? We're a couple. Zhang Chong twitched the corner of his mouth in disbelief. Your mom. Inside the warehouse, Chen Feng checked his physical condition. He took off his shirt and tossed it aside, then lifted his tank top. The lines of his abdominal muscles were deep, his muscles brawny, even more solid than before. He was a total muscle man. Now he was confident that if he acted when zombies were completely off guard, his skills combined with his current strength could instantly kill 2 zombies without any problem. Host. Chen Feng identity. Saviour physical activity. 9.0 infection. Immune to infection possession. Space ability. Rescue just now. He had taken in 4 people, increasing his activity by a total of 0.5. Among them, Zhang Chong contributed 0.2 activity. It was an unexpected bonus. An activity of 9.0. Basically, he was among the top tier of humanity. As for the theoretical 10 points, he had discussed it with the system. That was just theoretical. Ordinary people like Zhang Chong and the others generally had activity around 6 to 7. Awesome. Chen Feng clenched his fists, his spirits high, feeling as if he had inexhaustible strength throughout his body. This was power. Only with sufficient power could one survive in the apocalypse. Not enough. Chen Feng rummaged through the goods, took out a notebook and a pen, and started sketching. Soon, a simple map appeared on the page. In the starlight. For buildings A, B, C, and D. The 4 buildings are arranged in a square at the 4 corners. Building D is his location. Chen Feng marked 2 question marks on B and C. The situation in these 2 buildings is unknown. He has no idea. As for Building A, Chen Feng held the pen and drew a heavy circle on the first floor of Building A. That's where those guys are. 7 people. And they all have weapons. It won't be easy to take them all on at once. One-on-one, he fears no one. Even if someone's vitality surpasses his killing skills can still give him a fighting chance. But facing multiple opponents or a large number of zombies is still very troublesome. In his memory, among those 7 guys, 2 are relatively thin and weak. 1 is elderly, 1 is quite sturdy, another is probably around 200 gene, and the remaining 2 have average builds. According to his estimate, their vitality should be between 4 and 8. That fat guy's combat power is an unknown. Hard to judge. But he's not alone, and there's plenty of time. The location of Building A is very special. C and D are north-south oriented, practically facing each other. So is Building B. Only Building A faces the direction of the community entrance. The Property Management and Residence Committee are also in Building A. Maybe it was originally planned as an office building or for other considerations. Due to the special design of Building A, the entrance is correspondingly farther. The actual walking distance from Building A is about 200 meters. Outside, it's all zombies. It wasn't until the day after tomorrow that someone from Building A dared to come over. That was when he learned about the security guard situation. The day after tomorrow. For days, Chen Feng picked up the pen and drew a circle on the paper, enclosing the entire Building D. He'll start right here. Building D is the easiest place for him to operate. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. Plenty of time. But zombies are still a problem. According to his calculations, there are at least a dozen zombies roaming inside Building D. The numbers might fluctuate a bit, but not by much. Yesterday's commotion from Building C only attracted zombies near the first and second floors. Those further up barely moved. The sound source was brief and not very close. A dozen or so zombies. Chen Feng looked up at the clock he had hung earlier. It was about time. He tossed the drawing and pen into his space, and also fished out some compressed biscuits, chocolate, and bottled water from the supplies. He threw them all into his space in one go. A bottom-line safety net is a must. And cigarettes. Gotta pack some of those too. Once he'd packed enough, Chen Feng picked up the watermelon knife and walked out, seeing Zhang Chong squatting in front of the passageway. He arrived at the hall. Han Hui and Su Lily had found a corner to lie down. He didn't know if they were asleep. Shirley and Li Fong were in another corner. So, tonight you're on the same shift as me. Zhang Chong cursed the four of them inwardly, stood up, patted his butt, and forced a smile. Boss, I'm on shift with you. Just tell me what to do. You stay here. I'll keep watch at the counter inside, watching the side door. If you hear anything, call me. Chen Feng pointed to a spot behind him. Zhang Chong nodded repeatedly. Got it, boss. Chen Feng went behind the counter, placed the watermelon knife on it, took out new paper and pen, and began sketching a map of the Starlight neighborhood and its surroundings from memory. His memory was a bit fuzzy, but he still remembered the general locations. The supermarket was very quiet. Only the ticking of the clock reminded them that time was passing minute by minute. And Zhang Chong's occasional yawns. No, very frequent yawns. Especially when Chen Feng was smoking, Zhang Chong couldn't help but glance over. Chen Feng held a cigarette between his fingers, looked up at him. Want to smoke? Zhang Chong scratched his head awkwardly. I've run out. Oh. Chen Feng slowly exhaled a puff of smoke, then bear with it. Zhang Chong. Until nearly 5 o'clock. Outside, the sky was already getting slightly bright. The morning light streamed through the window glass, making the supermarket a bit brighter. Zhang Chong stood up, shook his numb legs. Boss. It's about time. I'll go wake those two up. Chen Feng put away the paper and pen, pointed at the watermelon knife on the counter. Go ahead. Also, tell them this knife stays here. It's for your self-defense. The building isn't safe. Don't make any noise unless necessary. He stretched. As for breakfast, I'll hand it out when I wake up. Zhang Chong stared at the knife, stunned for a moment. He nodded. Okay, boss, I'll tell them. Chen Feng casually glanced at the watermelon knife, turned around, and a strange curve formed at the corner of his mouth. Very soon, Shirley and Li Fong woke up. The two of them walked over groggily, staggering as if they hadn't slept nearly enough. Zhang Chong yawned, too tired to go on. I'll leave this to you. Food will be handed out when the boss wakes up. Call if anything happens. Li Fong asked expectantly. Okay. Did the boss say if we could get a bit more water? This water ration is way too little, and there's so much water in the warehouse. Damn. Zhang Chong glanced toward the warehouse. Ask him yourself if you want. I'm not going. What if he stabs me? Anyway, I'm scared of him. Shirley frowned in displeasure. Be polite. Zhang Chong shrugged. Don't be nervous. I meant no harm. It's just how I talk. Fine. Fine. I can't afford to mess with the boss or you guys. You're thirsty. I'm thirsty too. I don't dare ask. You ask him yourselves, okay? I'm going to sleep. Zhang Chong left. The knife on the counter had disappeared at some point. Morning. Han Hui and Su Lily took over the watch. Su Lily took out her water bottle and gulped down mouthful after mouthful. After a few sips, she stared longingly at the little water left. It was already less than a quarter full. Dying of thirst. Su Lily rubbed her eyes, sat down in the chair with a face full of impatience, even thirstier after sleeping. How is this little water enough to drink? Han Hui shook her head listlessly. Conserve it. There's no other way. Su Lily sat down and slammed her water bottle onto the counter. Bastard. What a jerk. Oh right. Where's your boyfriend? Su Lily looked at Han Hui with sudden curiosity. I remember you were sharing a place with your boyfriend. Han Hui opened her mouth, then closed it. She sighed before speaking, her voice low. He's dead. Dead. Su Lily was startled. and her expression turned apologetic. Sorry about that. Where was he bitten? At home. Han Hui shook her head with a complicated expression. He wasn't bitten. Not bitten. Su Lily blinked and asked tentatively. Then how did he die? Han Hui was silent for 2 seconds. Killed by Chen Feng. Wow, what? Su Lily was shocked by the news. Why? She couldn't understand. Han Hui shook her head. I don't know. I came out of the shower and saw Zhao Tian killed by him. I don't know what happened. Then why are you following him? Su Lily was even more puzzled, unable to comprehend. Han Hui's expression was unnatural and very troubled. She placed her hands on her legs and rubbed them uneasily. I didn't dare disobey him. Su Lily nodded with an I get it look. She stared at the warehouse and sneered. That animal. I bet he's got his eye on you. Taking advantage of the apocalypse when everything's in chaos and no one's in charge, he killed Zhao Tian to possess you. That can't be. Han Hui looked up, her face full of confusion. Actually, we've known each other for a long time. There was something she didn't say. If Chen Feng wanted her, he could have done it upstairs. Trust me. Su Lily came over to Han Hui, patted her hand. It must be. You're so pretty. He's probably been lusting after you for ages. Han Hui was speechless, but Su Lily's words reminded her of when Chen Feng had said upstairs that he would use her. Could it really be? Han Hui rubbed her temples and took a sip of water. Su Lily, Sister Hui, be careful. Careful? Han Hui smiled bitterly. What's the use of being careful? Now, staying alive depends entirely on Chen Feng. She didn't answer directly but joked instead. If you ask me, you're the one who should be careful, as pretty as you are. Of course. Su Lily proudly puffed out her chest, clad in a camisole. Her slender, fair hand brushed the curly hair by her ear, revealing a pretty face. No woman dislikes compliments. The two women chatted and laughed, finding joy amidst hardship. After a while, everyone woke up. Not just Zhang Chong, but also Shirley and Li Fong, who had just been relieved, woke up. Zhang Chong scratched his head. Is it my shift already? Not yet. Han Hui looked at the three of them and kindly reminded. You can sleep a little longer. Shirley's face was grim, not sleeping, dying of thirst. Hearing Shirley's complaint, everyone's expressions turned sour. Everyone was very thirsty. 1 bottle of water was simply not enough to drink. Not to mention a day, even half a day couldn't be endured. Time to eat. Chen Feng's voice drew everyone's attention. Chen Feng was carrying a shopping basket with some bread inside, all of which had short shelf lives and needed to be eaten first. He placed it on the counter. Everyone's awake. Chen Feng glanced around, 1 each. Thanks, boss. Zhang Chong trotted over eagerly and took a bread roll. Han Hui took 1, turned around, and handed 1 to Su Lily. Su Lily took the bread and said sarcastically, Don't you have any common sense? Eating bread when you're this thirsty. Chen Feng looked up expressionlessly, and Su Lily lowered her head awkwardly. Boss, can we have a bit more water? Shirley took a bread roll, his face full of bitterness. Chen Feng took out Li Fong's bread and tossed it to her. No. Suddenly, Shirley's expression changed, his face full of ferocity, and he shouted sternly, Don't move. He pointed a watermelon knife straight at Chen Feng. The sudden turn of events shocked everyone, and Han Hui and Su Lily immediately stood up. Zhang Chong also walked over in surprise. No one had expected that Shirley would actually point a knife at Chen Feng. Had the situation reversed? Shirley gripped the knife and sneered, Boss? Calling you boss and you really think you're the boss? Who do you think you are, daring to call me a good-for-nothing? Everyone treats me like I'm invisible. It's time I took over as boss. Water, water. Li Fong tugged at Shirley's sleeve to remind him. Shirley stared at Chen Feng. Take out the warehouse key. I know you've hidden all the water inside there. You're really sly, leaving some useless seasonings and inedible stuff in the corridor. Chen Feng shook his head. You've got some brains, but not much. My overall assessment of you remains unchanged, still a good-for-nothing. Shirley's face flushed with anger, and he pointed the knife at Chen Feng. Are you tired of living? The key. Take out the key. Chen Feng took out the key, raised his hand and shook it. Want it? The appearance of the key made everyone's eyes go wide.